America has been hit by the coronavirus, and in particular, the music industry has been hit. I'm Scoot. I'm upstairs in a room at the historic Napoleon House restaurant in the historic French Quarter of New Orleans. And I'm sitting with some people who are going to have a roundtable discussion with us about coronavirus, and in particular how it has affected the music industry. Roland Guerin is with us. He's got a new album out titled Grassroots. Here's that. Dexter Allen is a singer-songwriter from Mississippi. Dexter Allen live from Ground Zero Blues Club. See, I get to keep all these, you know. I score all this. And Lilli Lewis is a label manager for Louisiana Red Hot Records, and they just won the Offbeat Label of the Year. And Lilli's album is Lilli Lewis Project, We Belong. Also, first up, I want to introduce Dr. Markalain Dery. Dr. Allen has an interesting background. He's a bass player, musician, and you're an infectious disease doctor.
Yes.
So talk to us, and as each of you talk, we're going to make this very relaxed, but just, you know, kind of grab the mic and pull it towards you. I am a germaphobe, so
am I.
I've been concerned about germs for a long time. I can't say that coronavirus has changed my life very much, but what is it that you would like people to know, facts versus fiction when it comes to coronavirus?
Sure. So the three recommendations that I've been telling people regularly is hand washing, hand washing, hand washing. That is single-handedly the most important thing. I keep these with me everywhere I go now more than ever. So this is a hand sanitizer, right? And if you're going to be using a hand sanitizer, you want to make sure that it has 60 to 90% alcohol. If you're going to be hand washing with soap and water, you want to at least do it for 20 seconds. So pick 20 seconds of your favorite song, right? Wash your hands that way, soap and water.
And so we do it 20 seconds because, like, after 10 seconds, some of the germs are hanging on to dear life and they're not quite dead yet?
It's probably, we tend to err on the side of being conservative in medicine, especially infectious diseases. So 20% or 20 seconds, somebody I'm sure did a study somewhere that showed, you know, that probably got rid of 99% of the germs on the hand. Since this is your job, and you're also a musician, how surprised are you that this has so quickly affected the music industry? Well, it was predictable. It was absolutely predictable. I mean, as somebody who's studied infectious diseases literally my whole life and has been a physician for the past 20 years, specializing in infectious diseases, this is how epidemics affect society. So this was something that was easily predictable, especially when studying previous epidemics that are very well documented. When you look at the last big one that happened, I mean, you know, in 1918, influenza virus decimated the globe. I mean, upwards to 100 million people. So you expect that things like this would happen, especially when you're looking at folks, you know, quite like yourselves that work in the entertainment or the service industry, where folks are, you know, quarantine is going to be the rule of the day coming up here very soon. In China, they quarantined 100 million people. It's 10% of the population. In Italy, they quarantined 16 million people, which is the entire population of Italy. And in doing so, they had networks in which food and delivery and this sort of stuff. In Italy, they've suspended mortgage payments to help relieve the pain of quarantine. Unfortunately, here, this country is just not built on a system like that. Between a very patchwork healthcare system and a social system that's constantly being rated budgetary-wise, it's just going to be difficult. And those that are most at risk, besides the service industry folks and my esteemed colleagues here, you know, the three populations that I'm also very concerned about are those that are in the carceral system that are literally locked together. We're going to see significant problems there. In nursing homes, we're seeing problems in Seattle. And then lastly, in overnight homeless shelters. So I'm afraid that this is going to shift people who are already maybe somewhat housing insecure, possibly into some homelessness. So I have a feeling that the days ahead of us, unless we act appropriately, could potentially be problematic.
How uncomfortable would you be walking down a crowded Bourbon Street tonight?
I would not do that.
Really?
Yeah. I would not do that. I think at this point it's wise to avoid crowds. And I've been advising, I have a large HIV conference this weekend that had been planned. We've been planning it for 6 months. I just canceled it. I'm a host of a radio program myself. And we were going to do a live broadcast on Monday night at the Ace Hotel, canceled that as well. So I'm suggesting, I think that what the mayor did this weekend, I think was completely appropriate.
So compared to the more common strains of the flu, tell us the big difference with coronavirus.
Sure.
In addition to the lethal rate,
Sure.
we know that, but in terms of communicability, if that's the right word to say.
I know exactly what you're asking me. So, so coronavirus essentially circulates already amongst the human population as a common cold, and it accounts for 10% of the colds that we get. So as somebody who's 51, if I get a common cold every year, it stands to reason that over 5 decades I've gotten a coronavirus at least 5 times, right? But that virus that circulates is acclimated to human beings. It originated from an animal source, but it has since acclimated to the human immune system. The same thing with the influenza. When an influenza jumps directly from an avian or from a swine into the human population, it's particularly lethal. But now the flu has acclimated to the human population and circulates. So this particular coronavirus, the reason why it's called a novel coronavirus is that it's new. And what's new about it is that there is an animal host that's likely a mammal host, which was a bat, that went to a secondary host that we don't know what that secondary host is, and then from there it jumped into the human population in something that's called zoonosis. And because it's now jumped in the human population, that virus is very new to the human immune system, and that's why this is particularly lethal. It's more infectious than the influenza, and it's also has a higher mortality rate. Now, from a virus's perspective, it doesn't want to kill its host, right? That's not to the evolutionary advantage for a virus to kill its host. So eventually, it's going to chill out. As it starts to circulate through humans, it's going to lose that edge in which evolutionary pressure is going to force it to become less lethal and less infectious. But that's just going to be over a course of time. And unfortunately, there's going to be people who are going to be infected, and there's going to be some issues.
When you talk about hosts, I mean, this is just taking me right back to the movie Outbreak, which freaked me out.
Sure.
How similar is this to what we saw in Outbreak?
Well, the movie Outbreak was focusing on Ebola, particularly, which is a virus that's communicated through touch. And so or at least I don't remember the movie, at least the book was about Ebola. This is a little bit more random than touch. So during the Ebola outbreak, I went down to Sierra Leone and did 4 months with the World Health Organization as a clinical epidemiologist. So I was on the front lines looking for cases of Ebola, active cases. And I was very secure because I just never touched anything because I'm very, like yourself, I'm a germaphobe. I'm very obsessed where my hands are. This virus is a little different because there's the randomness plays a role here in the form that it is transmitted through droplets. So you could just be standing around, somebody could be coughing 5 feet from you, and that cough or that sneeze may have found their way inside to your lungs. And so 80% of people who experience this that are going to have kind of a common cold-like, symptoms, and it's those that are a little bit more advanced in age and that have other chronic health problems that are going to be more at risk for some more severe expression of the illness.
I find it fascinating that you would go to the front line where these people are all infected, but you don't want to walk down Bourbon Street.
Yeah, I mean, I was evaluating patients today, but I when I evaluate patients, I'm wearing masks and gowns and that sort of stuff.
Let's talk briefly about the cloth mask. I mean, does it people are wearing it even though we're told by many experts that it doesn't work?
Sure. So let's do the mask. So the size of the virus is 0.1 micron. So let me give you context to that. So the width of a human hair is 75 microns. So this is a very small organism. So when you look at the stitching of a mask, right, compared to what it's trying to hold back, it's like using a chain link fence to hold back flooding waters. It's just not going to work. So that's for a surgical mask, right? So the surgical mask was invented so that the surgeon, she did not spit or cough or sneeze into her open surgical field, right? But the surgical mask may be helpful in preventing you from touching your face inadvertently. So that may be a place. Remember, the mask started with the SARS virus in 2003, and that really came from the fact that the Asian people who started wearing masks are so considerate that in their culture, it was considered, you're considered rude if you're coughing, sneezing, or have a runny nose, and you're not wearing a mask to protect others. And that's
So one
where
of the
that came
things
from.
to this day that stands out in my mind about going to Japan is that the Asian culture is so considerate that if they're sick, they don't want you to get sick, so they're prone to wear masks. And for example, in Tokyo, look how close everybody is. There's no social distancing there.
Absolutely.
You scared the hell out of me, but thanks for the information. And as far as music is concerned, music, yeah, I mean, I would hate to know. I would hate to know what
we
you
were talking
know.
about being straight shooters, right?
All right. So what about what about the you talked about alcohol killing this 86 proof Jack Daniels.
That probably would work too, but I would no, I wouldn't. No, don't wash your hands. No. So, but I do have 3 recommendations. 1, hand washing, hand sanitizer, soap and water, 20 seconds. The second thing is, please, anybody who's listening to me, please go to the pharmacy and buy an oral thermometer. Okay, or if you have a thermometer at home, please make sure it works. Because if you call the doctor and if you develop a fever, the first thing we're going to ask is, what's your temperature? Now, here's the funny thing about the human body. You may feel like you're burning hot, and oh my God, I've got a fever, and everybody says that they have a fever. We put a thermometer in them, they're 98.5. So your perception of a fever does not match a real fever. So we're calling anything above 100.4 Fahrenheit or anything above 38 degrees Celsius a fever. So please go get a oral thermometer so that if you do get sick, you can talk smartly, or you can talk accurately, objectively with a healthcare professional. And then the last thing is go get your prescriptions, go get them early, and then get cough medicine, over-the-counter cough medicine, ibuprofen. Just stock up on flu and cold medicines in the event that you do get the virus.
How bad could this get?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of people develop the coronavirus. Again, the majority of people are going to it's just going to be like a flu and cold season. It's just that, I have a feeling that life is going to be disrupted. So life as we know it is going to be disrupted.
When will the main threat start to ease?
Hard to say. I would say that if I were to take a guess, I would say that we're going to probably be living disrupted lives for probably a couple weeks, maybe a little bit more than a couple weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if some of our bigger festivals coming down the line are canceled or rescheduled. Musicians may get sick wherever they are and they can't make it over. Airlines may not be flying. I mean, there's a lot of factors. So I have a feeling that life as we know, especially as and I say this again to my esteemed colleagues here, that life as we know it is likely going to change. I'm just trying to get people ready for that.
Dr. Markalain Dery, thank you for the very important information.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you spending. I know you have to depart and you've got another appointment, but thank you for spending time with us. So let's continue this conversation. Roland Guerin, new CD is Grassroots. You have spent time in Southeast Asia. You've been there recently, not too recently.
Not too recently.
You don't have it?
No.
Okay, I'm kidding.
And then,
Oh yeah, I like
but
that.
my tube wasn't as little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you look back on having been there, do you think that you were really fortunate?
Absolutely. The biggest thing that was the biggest surprise to me, their electric scooters. Scooters like in the States that look like they're probably 20 years old are gas and they sound like it, but they were electric. And I wasn't even thinking about any sickness, any virus or anything. We were just making good music. So I think really fortunate.
So do you feel, with all that the doctor told us and with all that's been said about this, how is this affecting you as a musician?
Directly. There were, I have a couple of things coming up. One is in Savannah, and we're waiting. I've been in contact with the folks that run the festival to to see, you know, if everything is on track. They've been saying that they're fully informationed up in terms of what to supply for people, what to supply for the musicians. Because I'm going there as a bass player, performer, but also a teacher for the most part of it. And I'll teach on April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Then, so I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with that. Daily checking email and figuring it out. In terms of performances in gigs, there've been, you know, shows canceled. You know, I talked to a friend of mine in Japan a few nights ago, and there were shows that were canceled at the Billboard Live, at the Blue Note, it's out there in Japan, and Cotton Club, and.
Well, Lilli, I'll ask you the same question. Lilli Lewis, how has this affected you? And are you surprised? I'm surprised that it has gotten to this particular point where there's this legitimate fear factor. And you know, again, as a germaphobe, I'm always concerned about germs. But I mean, the doctor told us some rather frightening things.
Right. Well, I am surprised and also relieved that the general population is actually responding to it with a certain degree of respect. You know, it's like know thy enemy, you know, and kind of know how your enemy works. It's remarkable that conferences and festivals have already been canceled, like South by Southwest. I had 2 appearances planned for South by. And I mean, that's a huge festival. It's 35 years. It's the first time it hasn't happened. And so many artists on the label are losing work all over the world. This is the time when most of us start planning to go out. We have to leave the city to make enough money to make a living, to afford to live here. And so, you know, European tours have been canceled, Southeast Asian tours have been canceled. And so the artists that I'm in direct contact with and you know, unfortunately feel somewhat responsible for are being heavily impacted. And I understand that that this is true for everyone. You know, schools are going on distance learning. You know, everyone in the service industry is going to be more vulnerable. I think I am particularly kind of worried about the music community, not just because I'm also a musician, but because we are already a very vulnerable population. Like, I don't know what the numbers are now, but 5 years ago, the average income for a musician in New Orleans in particular was $15,000 a year. So on average, a good bulk of us are living, you know, well below the poverty level. And so to have that degree of vulnerability already impacting the population, and then take out the few opportunities you have in a year to make $1, it's pretty rough.
So when South by Southwest cancels, you don't get paid.
Right. Well, fortunately, South by was not paying me, so that's a good one. You know, the loss there is the exposure. It takes people quite a bit of effort to set up an opportunity like that, and so to lose it, I mean, especially like, you know, you have a new recording, right? You plan out releasing that recording for up to 18 months, right? And then you schedule all kinds of opportunities around that new release in order to try to augment the life of the release. And so if these sorts of things happen at a time, you know, when you're in the middle of that flow, then your record totally disappears. I'll give you a good example. Kirk Joseph, who I'm a huge fan of, he's a founding member of the Dirty Dozen brass band. He released a solo album called Kirk Joseph's Backyard Groove back in 2005, about, you know, just a few weeks before Katrina. And it's a really beautiful record. I was an outsider at the time. I came across this record and I was like, what is this magic? And why has no one heard of it? Well, you know, the life of that record completely dissolved in the aftermath of that sort of thing. I was living in Boston for 9/11, and I feel like that was, you know, kind of equally impactful for any kind of endeavor that you spend a good amount of time trying to set up and roll out, so to speak. It really decimates your ability to. I mean, we're all musicians, and we're going to keep it rolling. Creative people can't not do what we do, so we keep it rolling, and we try our best to find ways to get good energy out to the people, regardless of what's going on. But don't think it's not. We're heavily impacted right away.
Is there a song that you do that would fit this conversation? And would you get up and do that for us?
I do have a song that I feel like very much fits this conversation, but I can't do it without my band. Okay. And it's off the new record. It's the title track on the new record, We Belong. But I have a song that offers tenderness to the people who are struggling, and I can do that for you. Absolutely. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
We need love, 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 love. We need love, 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 love. We need love, 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 love. On a short walk through this life. Please be kind, 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 kind. Please be kind, 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 kind. Please be kind, 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 kind. On your short walk through this life. Offer gentleness and grace, oh yeah. Offer gentleness and grace. Offer gentleness and grace. On your short walk through this life. Is anyone could be in pain? Oh, yeah. Anyone could be in pain. One could be in pain on their short walk through this life. There's a fire we all carry, and it leaves us when we break. We must offer up our fire on a short walk through this life. It's an offering of love, yeah. It's an offering of love. It's an offering of love. Short walk through this life.
Dexter Allen is a Mississippi singer and songwriter and guitar player, and new CD out. It's live from Ground Zero Blues Club. So let's talk about playing small clubs, Dexter. How has the coronavirus impacted you?
It's been scary. It's been real, you know. The scary part, I guess, would be something new and no one really knows a lot about. It gets real when your agent calls and says, you know, you got several $1,000s of gigs that are gonna get canceled. So it's been something to contend with. And, you know, the large festivals, you know, some of them are having meetings now, determining what they're gonna do. But on this level, for a touring artist like myself, it's much deeper because, you know, you have dates on the book and you have musicians and you have drivers and stuff, and they have the dates on their books. And then when those dates, if they don't happen, then now not only I not make money, they not make money. So then, you know, I'm looking at, okay, well, how do I compensate them for these dates canceling, because it has nothing to do with anyone. So everybody hurts, you know. Everybody feels it.
And just from talking to all of you, you can see how very early on investors saw what could happen in terms of the economy overall. Because when you talk about the people that work with you, then they're affected and they've got less money to spend in the economy. You can see that investors saw this coming.
On the way here, I had a long conversation with my agent, and we were looking at, okay, well, what do we do? Do we find work closer to home? You know, the smaller clubs. You know, because, you know, the ones that are further out, now you're exposing yourself to further things. So, I mean, we're going to have to make do, you know, I mean.
But in theory, social distancing, the idea that we don't get too close together, I mean, whether it's a big club, a festival, or a small club, that comes into play, doesn't it?
It definitely does. I mean, because with what I do in Roland and so many other artists, I mean, we're people. We're there for the people. And in the clubs, I mean, the more intimate it is, the more, I mean, that's what they come there for. That's what they, for the intimacy of the performances, especially in the clubs. The festivals, not so much. But it's kind of hard to not shake a fan's hand, you know, or not take a selfie, or, you know, so as the doctor was saying, some things as we know it are going to change, you know, and we have to adapt. And it's going to be tough, you know. I don't think the worst has hit yet. I think the worst may be yet to come for this industry, and you know, a lot of surrounding. I mean, just product. I mean, you buy product from the manufacturers because you're looking at these dates you're going to do. So now you may not do those dates. So that's money that you've lost for this quarter or maybe rest of the year, you know, and it's just sitting there. So there are a lot of losses. There are losses of life, which is the most important, but there's a lot of losses in this industry, as well as a lot of other businesses, I'm sure.
Can we break the seriousness of this by you doing a song for us?
Sure.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, cool. Dexter Allen.
Men and women, boys and girls are going through things all across this world. Sometimes bad, sometimes good. Things don't work out the way they should. Hold on, don't give in. Sometimes you might not have no friends. The darkest hour is just before day. Keep going, you make it anyway, you know why. Cause when things just ain't right, you can't give up your fight. Gotta keep going on each and every day. Sometimes things are gonna be okay, although you try all you can do. But remember, I'm telling you the news. Anyway you look at it, anyway you look at it, it's still called the blues. It's still called the blues. Listen. daughters against their sons. The government worrying about the corona, y'all, and wondering what to do about all the guns. A lot of people still got money, 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 but they still got problems. Everybody's looking for an easy way out, or some quick way to try to solve them, but you know what? 'Cause when things just don't go right, you can't give up your fight. Gotta keep going on each and every day. Things are gonna be okay, although you try all you can do. Nothing ever seems to go through, but remember, I'm telling you the news. Any way you look at it, any way you look at it, it's still called the blues.
Roland Guerin is a singer-songwriter, did a lot of work with Dr. John. How do you think Dr. John would react to coronavirus?
Oh my goodness.
He'd find a word. He'd find a word for it.
I think he would say the effect of the reciprocation of what's going on here today. Hey, I mean, we're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah. So, talk about your immediate plans. You've got this new CD out, Grassroots. You back in the winter, you were in Asian countries touring. How long is it going to be before you would be comfortable going back to an Asian country right now?
Well, I just spoke to some friends of mine, and they gave me a good, very vivid description of how they're dealing with things. So I think it's going to be a minute. I think it's going to be a long minute. And I'm sad to say that because I have a lot of friends there. And I'm a people lover, you know? I love people, love going to where the people are. And, you know, that's, I don't know, it's gonna be a long time. But mainly in terms of a country getting the structure together to accept somebody else and to know that everything is fine. You know, in terms of airlines and flying, things I think they should have been doing for a long time, but now they're doing the mist and cleaning the planes, you know, in a very, very, very thorough way.
Well, Lilli, will this change us forever? I mean, if you're not a germaphobe like me, are people going to start becoming more cognizant of germs being everywhere, like when they get on a plane, for example?
Well, you know, I really hope so, but I also know how cavalier we can be, you know, and we have these opposing voices. Some people are sounding the alarm. And the funny thing is the people who are sounding the alarm are saying really simple things like wash your hands for 20 seconds. I've chosen to take on don't tell me not to live, just sit and putter. You know, I get 2 verses of that in and I'm good, I'm golden. You know, they're asking us to do very simple things to contain it. And yet, then we have opposing voices that are saying, it's no big deal, it's a cold, you all get colds, you know. And so whether or not it's gonna change us forever, you know, I think just knowing how the basic psyche works and how generalized trauma works, you know, we're going to be impacted, but whether or not socially we're going to be more responsible, like whether or not we're going to be more thoughtful about not getting each other sick, or whether or not a silly person like me who only likes to perform is going to stay home and not go on the road, like, you know, that I'm still figuring that out for myself. But I do hope that it asks us to try to be more mindful with one another. I really hope that.
Well, you know, that's something that I think we could learn from Eastern cultures. They're much more considerate
yeah.
considerate of each other. And for those of you who've had experience in those areas,
Two of the clubs Roland mentioned earlier, Billboard Live and the Blue Note. About 16 years ago, was the first time playing those two places. One was in Billboard in Tokyo, and they had another one in Osaka back then.
That's right.
And even then, that was my first time in Japan. I saw people with the mask on.
Yes.
And that was
Yeah.
strange to me. I'm like, why do they have these masks on? I didn't understand. I thought it was something happening. But that was everywhere you went, you saw the mask on. And, you know, that's something that I think we're going to have to adapt to. As the doctor was saying, that's something. Now they were probably doing it just for the common cold or just to be courteous. But when you see it, you're like, whoa, what's happening here? Why are they wearing those masks?
We're
You
gonna
know?
make it a fashion statement.
Yeah,
We're gonna
yeah,
have a
yeah.
whole community of artists.
Got
that just
things
turn
floating in
it
my
in.
head right now
thinking
already.
about writing colors.
Totally.
you
Oh,
know?
totally.
Right.
Plaid,
you know.
Bedazzled, you know,
Yeah.
just like the nod.
Totally. But like the being considerate though. If anything, I think that folks that may have taken things for granted, not as far as the other folks that'd be like, oh, don't worry about it, this and that, and hacking all over everybody. But different folks just taking a minute to think about being courteous to the next person next to them. You know, in the form, if they don't have a mask or something like that, don't sneeze on somebody. You know, don't cough on somebody, especially like just, I mean, you know, full force. And
We've all seen it.
oh my goodness, you know, if you see it in slow motion, it's
Oh, I know. I heard last night on the news that a sneeze can hit 100 to 200 miles an hour.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's
Yeah. Okay, so what about you, Roland? Would you go on Bourbon Street tonight? Would you walk down Bourbon Street to go somewhere? Would you go to a club?
No. I mean, impacting me and impacting my family, we have a 9-month-old daughter. So I know it might look a little bit country, me carrying around the alcohol spray that's 99 point something
Give me some of that
percent.
right now.
Right.
You know, you know, yeah, you're right.
All right.
I mean,
I know, don't leave a girl
you know,
Come on, Dexter's
you
over
know,
here.
brother, hit it.
Share the alcohol.
You know, so I mean, I'm extra cautious in different ways because of that responsibility that I have as her dad
Yeah.
to not be careless and do something without thinking of, like I'm thinking about her, I'm thinking about my wife, I'm thinking about what I touch, I'm thinking about who I'm in contact with, like all the time. My awareness alert went up.
So it changed with the coronavirus.
Oh, it totally did. It totally did. And it was already up, but it went through the roof because I'm like, no, this is, you know, she had just started to crawl. She's just starting to say, you know, not completely daddy, but almost that in her own way. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be cautious, not scared, but cautious.
Is there a song that you'd like to play that might fit the mood of our conversation?
You know, definitely, especially talking about my our daughter. Grassroots is the title cut of my album. It's about family, not forgetting who we are, where we come from, our family history, and sharing it with the children, even when they're in.
Okay, here's Roland Guerin.
As one grows, time is handed out, a free gift of life, and who knows just how many have come to not understand just who they are, and they stand so still. Well, life within cannot begin to live. Well, life within cannot begin to live. All your mothers and your children just line up strong. The life's illusions won't bury our song, 'cause our family stories will keep us strong. When a child is born, their roots are long. All the mothers and your children, please line up strong. The many life's illusions won't bury our song. Our family stories will keep us strong. So when a child is born, their roots are long. So when a child is born, their roots are long. So please, when a child is born, their roots are long.
Dexter, when I think about how isolated Mississippi can be in terms of not being a metropolitan, a big cosmopolitan area, you can't help but think that there are people in Mississippi that are taking the coronavirus extremely seriously, just like a big city.
Very seriously. I mean, because, it's a lot of land there in Mississippi, a lot of people. And people, people like to congregate. People like to do things together. They out, shopping or going out to eat, or the normal things in normal places. But this thing is not just state to state. Because I was looking at the map and then I was saying, okay, I said, well, everything's red. Mississippi's not red. It wasn't red yet. And
Well, it's red in one sense. But
yeah, right, definitely. And I'm saying, I'm like, well, maybe it's gonna skip. No, it doesn't skip. It doesn't skip, and it hadn't skipped. So I think wherever you are, you just have to be careful. You have to do like Roland was saying, the practices of washing your hands. I know that's one of the things I do as soon as I get home. Before this came out, this first thing I do, because I shake so many hands.
Yeah.
At night, even if I'm not performing, if I'm going somewhere just to watch someone else, people know you, they come up, they're going to shake your hand, they want to, be close to you. And I think that's the biggest scare, because I don't ever want a fan to come and say, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, hey.
Well, I know, like in church for a long time.
I was gonna say that.
I do the peace sign, and I feel badly when somebody sticks out their hand, and I'm basically rejecting them. But that's just that's who I am. But this past Sunday in church, I saw a lot more hands being pulled back.
Say that, and they call Mississippi the Bible Belt. That's his history. I come from the church, the gospel music. That's where I was raised at, and that's something that the church is. I hadn't heard anything yet on that level of the churches talking. But you look at every Sunday. There's some churches in Mississippi. There's some thousands of people, in these churches every Sunday, and they're all sitting side by side on the pews, and
there's no social distancing
there's
in
no.
church.
So we're talking about bands and clubs and things closing. What about the large churches? Regardless of your religion, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, whatever. They're large
And interestingly,
congregations.
this would be a time when people would want to go to church to pray, and it might be that
may
wouldn't
not
be
be
the
safe to
best
do
place to go.
Well, we had a conference here in New Orleans for Folk Alliance International. It's been around, they've been doing these conferences for 30 years. It's the first time it's come to New Orleans. It's going to be at least another decade before they come back. And it was 3,000 people from all over the world descending upon one hotel. And it happened to, I think the first day of Folk Alliance was January 22nd. We started tracking coronavirus here in the States on January 21st. And, and I got a cold during that conference. And so, and this conference was church for us. We had programming from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's just music everywhere, and community, camaraderie, everyone in the building was a musician, so you sing one chorus, and on the next chorus you're gonna get harmony, and it's, this just, I'm gonna use the word orgy of excitement for music nerds, and for writers like me, so really incredible. But then I get a cold during this time, and I've been in this hotel, so I don't even know anything about COVID-19 yet. Actually, it wasn't even named yet. So I don't know anything about it. And I come home from the hotel after, after being with these wonderful people from all over the world. And I'd take a nap for a couple of days because I worked my butt off during that time, right? And when I wake up, there's like, coronavirus, it's the end of the world, it's, and I realized, fellowship, it's what we live on, and it's also the seat of our vulnerability. And I think as humans, we have to learn how to manage both of those things.
Right. A very quick answer from all of you before we wrap up. Music reflects society. Do you sense that what we're going through right now will somehow be reflected in your songwriting?
I think this is going to be a great time for introverted music. For introverts, I think we're finally going to shine. That's why.
To answer the question, yes. In terms of, I always think about people in togetherness. Without being able to express togetherness live and in person, and sharing that, it's that's going to be a hard thing.
Dexter?
I think it's really going to be healing. I mean, in my being a musician and a singer, it's going to be healing, and I think that's what we need. Music has a universal language, and I think it's something that as musicians and as singers, I think we're going to find a way to reach the world with music, because everyone understands it.
Yeah.
Everyone understands it and can feel it.
Well, Dexter,
Can I say
go ahead.
one more
Sure.
thing?
It's healing.
And maybe this is on my mind as a label manager. For anyone out there who wants to know how they can support the musicians who are trying to facilitate this healing, if we're not able to come to your town, if we're not able to to do the big arena concert or to do the small club concert that we normally would do, if you are going to go to that gig and pay $10 for your drink or $5 for your cover or whatever, I challenge anyone to spend that $15 a week on buying new music. Don't just stream. In this time, it's pennies on the dollar, the stream. It's fractions of pennies on the dollar when it comes to streaming. So please stream the music all you want, but also buy it. Remember that the reason we still make physical product, the reason we still go through all the expense and trouble of producing this music is because we really are corny people who want to get love to your door. And there are lots of
Right.
ways to do it. So
Definitely.
Lilli Lewis, Roland Guerin, Dexter Allen. Let's do some elbow and fist bumps here.
Here we go.
All right. I'm Scoot. It has been a pleasure to sit down and hopefully bring you some information about coronavirus and also how it is really impacting the music industry.